Hi, friends. My name is Hannah, and I just like to talk about all the things I'm learning and thinking about while I am trying to figure out how to have a sustainable source of income and a integrated quality of life as a disabled person, as somebody who has, you know, 33 years old and been through a lot of stuff in life, as we all do at some points, and just trying to figure out, you know, what it all means, which is an ongoing long-term process, of course. So today I'm and happy holidays, by the way. Got all my cute little Christmas decorations set up. um, so I didn't even celebrate Christmas last year, like no decorations. I was delivering Amazon packages. I wore a Santa hat while delivering, and that was the beginning and end of my Christmas celebration last year. So this year I'm like extra cherishing it, and I got the very tiniest tree that they had on the lot. I love it so much. Okay, so I just wanted to talk about how money, just things related to how money affects our sense of self-love, our sense of pride, our sense of self-advocacy, how it ties into how having money or lack of having money, it ties into all of the extra layers of discrimination that we're up against as neurodivergent people or just disabled people, um, whatever it is for you personally that people we face discrimination from. Um, Not having money makes that harder, and um, there's a lot I can't speak to because it's not really my personal experience, and I only talk about the things I personally experience. So, yeah, basically, I was just thinking how when you have when you um earn money, it gives you a sense of legitimacy in other people's eyes, right? Like there's this narrative out in the world that it's really hard to not internalize it against ourselves. But there's this narrative out in the world, you could say a capitalistic narrative also, or, poor people trying to survive, turning on each other. um, but there's a narrative that, like, everyone has to pull their weight and you are a dead weight, you're worthless, you're a waste of energy, time if you aren't making money. And I'm grateful that I don't have that in my life directly at this stage, but I do have, relics of that kind of pain that's still rolling around in my mind and causes me to feel angry that it's just in the world, and afraid that I could be subject to that again if my circumstances change. Um, it's a very precarious feeling. I'm angry that people are affected by that idea, but there is that idea that's like that, and also that real fear, not even like using shame to try to persuade people. Like I understand like people use that shaming, like terrorizing narrative in order to try to force people to change, um, to be something that we're not even set up to be, but in order to make money, because it is real that, like, if you only have one person in your family making money, or just the less resources you have, the more struggles you face, like access to healthcare, um access you know um access to just like a higher quality of living, access to more peace and freedom and like nice environments, uh, the ability, like money is the ticket to the kind of lifestyle that you want to live. Like I would love to be on, like have my own land on a farm one day, not be like an indentured servant on other people's farms like I did in my early 20s, early to mid 20s, but like actually having or co-owning land with other people, like all the things that make your life feel meaningful and worth living and give you access to the resources that fit your personal strengths and limitations, like that all takes money, right? And and there's also like, what if only one person is making money and then they stop, and then you're just like, oh God, like I can't protect me and my loved ones. I think that's an essential skill for everyone to hopefully try to learn in some kind of way. And the internet gratefully makes it a lot easier for people to do so, but it's still extremely challenging as I am trying to figure out my own approach to making money and just what is money, like how, like what are my own beliefs and my self-regard, which causes me to um not be able to access money. Like how do I ask for money in a way that feels legitimate to me and I feel like I understand it myself, all these questions. But anyway, that's an aside. Money is like what allows you to save your loved ones and to be there for your loved ones and protect your loved ones. And it's really scary if you're like, oh God, like I am incapable of providing in that way, and feeling like you could let down your loved ones. Um and well, yeah, so money, I today I've just been thinking about especially how money legitimizes people, how that is like an idea in the world, right? Like you can have someone who, especially because interested in neurodivergence or neurodiversity type of justice, um, and education and advocacy and all that. But I think of like, you know, money is a lot of the times what causes people to even be labeled in this way, because they've been demonized, and then people get saddled with all these labels and these um and I'm not saying that if you have money you won't be saddled with things, but I'm just saying it's an extra layer of difficulty, um I think, to not internalize it upon yourself, when you are financially dependent. And yeah, I know everybody is financially dependent in some kind of way. Like you can have a horrible job, and you're making money, but you're still financially dependent on like it within an abusive situation. Like that is really true too. And I don't know, I can only speak from my experience, somebody who has only made consistent decent income for 2 years out of my whole 33-year-old life span. from from my perspective, it's really hard when you try to get help from resources like, social services, and just like the local kind of like government based health supports. And honestly, I think there's pros and cons, with everything. There's always that kernel of gratitude to some degree, and this like, you know it's serving an essential function. On the other hand, like it can be majorly improved, and real damage has been done at the hands of this, person or service, or both of these things are true, right? And I find that especially when you're a poor person, neurodivergent, and that's just what I speak to, but you could put a lot of other descriptors in there. But when you are like that kind of person, you can receive a lot of discrimination at the hands of people who you are trying to seek help from, to try to raise yourself, to try to find some kind of bearings and situation. And unfortunately, I think it tends to be with people who are kind of hyper independent, like myself, like how I have had that most of my life. You feel hyper dependent from other people, so you go to an organization because you feel like, oh, if it's an organization, it's powerful. Like, surely these people, like, these people are different. Like, there's more accountability, or they have a different way about them, but they're just your everyday people doing their best within a broken system also. So it is, I have internalized a lot of negative things about myself that has been enforced upon me at the hands of, mindsets that have been given to me at the hands of these services that I received help from. And I think about, there's so many people in the world who they don't try to, go through social services. They just go through, friends, family. And they're also disabled. They also don't make money. Um, but they earn their way, or they make their way. I don't really like saying earning, but it's a phrase. And it kind of gives credit also to the idea that we are all like working, even if you don't have a formal job, like everybody is working in order to maintain their way in the world, and do the best with what they have, including emotional resources, like informational resources, like all kinds of resources. But I don't really remember what I was just talking about. We're all doing the best that we can. Um, yeah, there's just a lot of mindsets that, like, these average everyday people who are in positions as therapists, as social workers, as healthcare employees, healthcare provider employees, doctors, like, they're just the general population also. And just because they are in service with a supposedly like altruistic and like beautiful part of society of like helping, it doesn't mean that they don't have their own intense, you know, struggles, or their own learning path that they're on, or their own incompatibilities, or their own incompatibilities with like me or like their clients. And there are great abuses of power that happen in these environments that I've been the recipient of, and that I think have really ingrained in me these senses of helplessness, because it has put in me these senses of like looking down on myself, always feeling like for years, especially because I was in abusive relationships, like feeling like even when I was looking for help, the people I was looking for help from, they were condemning me, just using shame and punishment, um, in order to try to like change me, that kind of idea handed down from religions. And in some ways, I've been unlucky with the types of environments I've had access to, but in other ways, I have also had great helps from social services. Um, I mean, I learned things from talking with therapists. If only, I mean, I have learned things like about cognitive distortions, or just in general learning like how how power dynamics can be so difficult, and in how that kind of culty dynamic is alive, like super common just in the world, because that is how we are taught to communicate with each other and to approach one another. It's, and by culty, when I say, because culty is very vague, when I say culty, I mean a dynamic where people try to use shame and punishment and fear in order to attempt to communicate their thoughts and feelings, or attempt to get you to change in some way that they think that you should be. Um, and to, I guess you could also maybe relate it to like, I don't know much about this, but what is it called with autism? It's like ABA, applied behavioral analysis or something. It's probably kind of related to that too. It's like just manipulating people instead of relating to people on a personal level. You're just trying to like put in inputs and manipulate their behaviors without it being about relating and having that positive relationship being what like causes the human being to have a different understanding of themselves, connect to different parts of their souls, understand like our strengths and limitations so that we can actually find a compatible way in the world instead of just trying to get ourselves to like shame and like force ourselves into that shape to where we can survive in the common like I don't know, public services idea of like what is the right way to get by in the world. And people within these systems we look for help from, like they are a part of that system where they have to really squash themselves and be hard, and that is what they have learned to survive, so they can't really share a perspective that is different. And yeah, so yeah, just thinking in general how money, you know, lack of money can make us feel really vulnerable and put us at the hands of, even if you haven't gone through, the social services, public health, therapist type route, that hyper individualistic type route that I did for survival. Like you probably have also experienced abuse from other people that you were dependent on, because unfortunately that is a really sad common thing in the world, in this um world that I think communism, I think capitalism is, there's all the stereotypes and negative stereotypes associated with it, but ideally it could just be this idea of like everybody has capital, everybody like looking at our own unique skills and abilities and limitations as all being a part of our unique capital, and then using that to get us value, to get us resources and love and money, which represents access to resources and love and protection and shielding and nurturing of ourselves, so that we can then give that to other loved ones and be like really have something really like sustainable and strong, that like sense of those close relationships, interpersonal relationships. That is just really beautiful to think about, and to know that that is sorry, if I was writing, this is where I would then have to go back and then read because I'm forgetting what I even just said. But but yeah, uh there is that book that I was reading that actually I haven't continued reading it, but just in case someone looks at this in the future, um, the like, so a lot of, I don't know that much about the history of therapy, but I do know in some ways that it originated as, well, okay, okay, I don't have the brain power right now for that, but but basically the good side of therapy that I haven't experienced much, unfortunately, like, formal therapy. Like, the most therapeutic experiences I've had is with friends, with peers, where there's a real interpersonal relationship and it is all based on, you know, um, actual invested support and learning more about people, learning more about myself through learning more about other people. And but the book that I really like, the approach of therapy, or the approach of, helping in general, helping people, this idea of all these systems that try to help poor people. help people who are disabled, help people who don't have access to resources. The perspective I like is kind of some of it I saw in that book, on becoming a person. I can't remember who it's by right now, but in that book, it's just the emphasis is on that personal relationship, but that can be really iffy if you feel like you have to fake. That can be not healthy to either person if you feel like you have to fake. Real relationships should always be like honest, transparent. If you can't actually be invested in someone in a certain kind of way, or it crosses a boundary of comfort. And a lot of therapists, unfortunately, they want the money, and so they're trapped into the same thing where they feel like they can't be transparent about where boundaries stand because they need access to that money. And most of the therapists I've talked to have been social workers, or just I mean, there's been, what's LMFT, whatever that is. I've talked to people who have that license also, and I don't know what's going on in the world, but people are people. And no matter what, I think we have to be really strong in ourselves to know that we aren't going to internalize the shame that these people want us to put on ourselves. Not because they're evil. Like these people who are there to help us, they do want us to hate ourselves and shame ourselves, think poorly of ourselves, criticize ourselves, be like hyper. They want us to do that because that is their belief, and that they enforce upon themselves. Probably. Can't say for sure, but they believe that's the only way to help people, or to have people change and be able to survive and have access to resources. And people don't encourage others enough to find ways of being in the world, ways of surviving, ways of accessing resources that put our actual emotions and needs in the forefront. And I think in ways I have, I don't know. I'll know more in the future to understand myself more in terms of like, sometimes I just think like, how did I, like, why have I been in these environments that, but that everybody can fall through the cracks, and everybody has their own unique story. But anyway, starting to get a headache, so I need to turn this off, but just wanted to talk a little bit about money. And we just have to be strong in ourselves to refuse to think poorly of ourselves, or to internalize this way of talking to ourselves, that we should be harsh, that we should be violent, to interpret other people. That's another thing I've been thinking about lately, is that sometimes interpreting other people as being violent to me, it just makes me feel really afraid and causes stress to me. Like, maybe somebody does intend to be really violent and cruel, but sometimes me interpreting it in that way, it just is like a distraction for me and not kind to myself. So I've been trying to understand, like, yes, it's important for me to have proper boundaries and understand where to invest my energy and time, and which people I'm compatible with. Um, uh, Maybe in the future I'll consider if I could teach people my perspective, but I think that is, you know, way in the future. For now, I'm just at the point where I'm like, if I um sense that incompatibility with somebody, then like I just see everybody as a peer, right? Like I don't see it as anybody like for me to teach people, unless I have, it's that teaching that happens in relationships, where close relationships, you're learning from and teaching. Both of you have that relationship, but I'm not gonna tell myself like it is my role to teach somebody who is trying to harm me. Um, so I think teaching things is good, but my personal approach to that is like, if somebody is trying to harm me and I feel harmed by them, it's not my place to teach them. I'm not the right voice that they'll even listen to. I'm not the correct, way for them to receive the information, and it's just, a stressful headache. So, uh, well, forgot what I was talking about again. But, yeah, money, thinking lately more about earning money and what that could look like for me, because the money isn't going to just start happening. You have to put, or I have to ask for money, have some kind of specific system for money, and it's really difficult trying to figure out the ethics of that for myself. What are my ethics regarding giving, receiving money, how to make it safe for both people involved. And then in between it all, I just, I'm really exhausted and my thoughts go in and out. Um, so, in the meantime, I'm also just trying to build my local uh sense of community, trying to build my internal sense of community, my partnership with myself, and also trying to build you know, friendships with people in person. We'll see if that pans out, but I'm trying to do that, and trying to build some relationships online with people, and trying to learn more about myself, like what is the core of like the things that are me that will let me bond with similar people and make more meaningful relationships and connections online. Like, what are those parts of me that when I'm not like, I don't have things going on in my head that are like based on things from the past, or just somehow not exactly relevant to me now, or just it's just like too stressful. Like, I'm learning more like what is stressing myself out. Maybe my values are something other than what part of me thinks it should be, and I actually value like um now, for example, like if I have to villainize someone, knowing that it's just not compatible, if I feel that sense of like villainizing someone, I just want to always retain that sense of compassion and that perspective that, like, there's that kernel of good and that positive attempt, and just like all people working together. And even if I don't agree with somebody, it doesn't mean that, or someone doesn't agree with me, it doesn't mean that we aren't both having our own respective, like, beautiful and necessary things that we're bringing to the world, like our own necessary roles to play. And I just want to get away from antagonistic, um, I don't know, acidic thoughts and feelings. And I think as I continue to think more on this and just learn how to enjoy being myself in my little world here in my everyday life, as I enjoy that, as I keep on learning how to enjoy that more, I think it's going to change. My focus will be able to narrow in, to understand, like, how do I even communicate in a really emotionally felt way, like those core parts of myself, so that I can connect with people who are on that same level. And somehow, I think friendships are important and money is important, but I don't think the two can go hand in hand, you know? I'm not sure. I'm not really sure that money and friendship can go hand in hand, because, or maybe that's something I need to work on myself, but you can always see it as like transactional. And yeah, it shouldn't be narrowed down to money in exchange for friendship, but there is also that dynamic inherent in it, which it just changes the ethics and the appropriate communication, transparency, like fully informing people and changing your behavior to remember like that it's a service, not like a friendship, or I don't know. I'm thinking about for money also, like receiving money. It feels a lot better when it feels like you are giving money that is like, or you were receiving money that is representing someone appreciating and kind of validating something that you love and find beautiful in yourself. Kind of validating that part of you, saying this, like you are valuable, this part of you is valuable, what you were talking about or what you were doing in some way is valuable. Like that is so much better than if you feel like somebody's just giving you money because they're doing it to be a good person or because they have to or because they're trying to be a good friend or whatever, you know. So yeah, it's really hard as we or maybe I shouldn't say it's really hard, but it is weird as, you know, for me, for many other people, I'm sure, as we're figuring out like just how to have a different relationship with ourselves in the world that involves sustainable income and acknowledgement of our strengths that we either demeaned or just didn't get proper respect for when we were younger, or strengths that we never put in the world in a way that it was like really visible for us to receive benefits from, or you know, um and yeah, anyway, just things I'm thinking about related to money and self-regard and partnership with people, and you know, balance trying to balance things, and just these questions, all of it is questions like if I do focus on positive compassionate things, will that have some kind of good outcome for me, instead of like looking to protect myself by, you know, being very villainizing and angry. And I know that has a place and it can be necessary too. I don't demonize that. But I'm just thinking of what will help me to feel better and how can I express myself in a way that will let me have like hopeful connections. Because man, this phone call or this video I'm making actually was inspired because earlier I was reading in here, you know. I went on a walk this morning, had a pretty good morning, and then I came back home and I was reading, and then I got a phone call from the local doctor's office um that said that I was recommended for a program that it's like a social services program supposed to link people up with like, I don't know, like trying to get people jobs, trying to get people like dentistry, which is cool. You know, I've used like respite dentists before, like free homeless person dentists. I used that just a few months ago. Um, because that's what's free, and that's, I don't know what the social services linked me up to, and I'm grateful to have access to that. But anyway, that on the phone, the woman who called me from the doctor's office said that my doctor had recommended to me to all these services, all these like public health services. And I think she, like this doctor, I like her the most out of any doctor I've ever had. She's very, very kind, very informative, very like, I feel like she's pretty respectful, you know. And I think that she just was sharing this information as like I could join this program as kind of like a preventative, like recommending it to all her clients. Because the woman I spoke to on the phone said that there was no reason listed for why I was recommended for it. But during the phone call, I felt this sense of like I had to prove myself that like I wasn't one of the like problem people. That's the sense I had, that I wasn't like a crazed addict who's like, you know, terrorizing people and needs to be, I mean, the phrase that comes to mind is like punished into submission, like that whole, like the way that people treated me for a long time, because like I've always been very polite, very quiet, but because I've been homeless, because I have like dressed weird, like people put those kinds of like, they treat me those kinds of assumptions, and just the environments I've been in, people treat me in really demeaning ways. And if you say you feel demeaned, they're like, well, I'm in a position of authority. Not that I've ever said it, but that that's what it would be. They'd be like, I'm in a position of authority. You're like, they just try to guilt you into hating yourself for even being there. Like, you can't get away from them. So why even? Anyway. But anyway, in this phone call, I just noticed it was like I had that sense of like anger towards the doctor at first. Like, is there something about me that you think I'm like so, crazy, whatever word you want to use, just like messed up, that like I need like heavy duty support, basically, like support for people who have a different type of disabilities than I do. And I had to be like, okay, she doesn't know me. She's not judging myself for this, but um she's not judging me for this. I think she was just kind of doing it as a preventative, like she doesn't know me, just like making sure that everyone has access to resources, because she's a really kind person. She's trying to do the best she can within a really messed up system. And but I realized for myself, like all the things I've been through, which it is like so complex, so many scars, so many like infected wounds, metaphorically infected wounds that I still have, that I don't really understand entirely, from how I've been demeaned and um harmed by these environments that were supposed to help me. And it just really got me thinking about how I am still so vulnerable, and I do need to keep on. I don't want to feel panicked, but I do need to keep on taking steps every day to try to support myself more, and know that, terrorizing myself, feeling panic, that's not a part of loving myself. But trying to be genuine with like, what are my authentic thoughts and feelings about trying to make money? Because if I'm making money, then I won't feel afraid, because I will feel like that sense of pride. No, I won't feel, like I need to wound that, or I need to heal that infected wound that I still have from past experiences of being demeaned, being oppressed by people, having my qualities, demonized, my positive qualities demonized or disregarded, or just how I've been so extremely self-harming and internalizing that, and being so dependent on other people, and systems, being super dependent on systems, because I'm trying not to be dependent on people, and finding it hard to trust individuals who are just like out and a part of society. But that, a lot of that is from my past, like 10 plus years ago. But it's really only been the past 2 years that things have been really changing for me, and learning a different relationship to myself, so that I can hopefully find myself being a part of communities that are actually like relevant to my life experiences, and being able to support one another through these weird things in life, especially because I really care about like disability justice and neurodivergent like advocacy, because hating and harming ourselves can be internalized so much that we just become like the fodder at the bottom of the pyramid that everybody is stepping on in order to try to get themselves like up. And you know, it's like shaped like a pyramid instead of like everybody being on equal ground and footing, like nobody having to stand and crush on top of each other in order to try to get like um above other people crushing them type of thing. Like that's what I think the whole game of like harm and shame it is. It's like seeing life as based on like a pyramid structure. Uh what is that called? Like class, yeah, classism has to do with that. Being economically mobile is really important to me because I want a good quality of life, and I feel so disgusted at all the people who I've witnessed being let down by the systems that are supposed to help them, not just me experiencing that, but people who didn't have the privileges that I have, but being treated even worse, and them not even having, like, they just fully internalize that they're horrible, and then their lives are just like forgotten. Like I had a roommate. She was an immigrant from Somalia, and you know, she was a part of the same dual diagnosis program, the group home I was in. And then when we were like transferred to an apartment together, like we chose to live together because we were friends. And then when we were in that apartment, we we started drinking and smoking together. We didn't have anybody trying to like involve us in anything else, like haven't anything that's like a part of our actual emotional lives or trauma. And so we still just use the same things that we did before the program um in order to try to cope, the same resources that all that we had access to, because the program didn't actually help us. And I have a lot of thoughts on why it didn't help. But after after that, she moved to, I don't remember where she moved to. She moved somewhere. She moved with relatives, I think, and then I just started living in my car and then doing more work exchanges on farms. And but then I googled her a couple years ago, and like she had been arrested a bunch more times for like drunk, I don't know, drunkenness and like stealing and things that are related to poverty and discrimination. Like she was such a kind woman, but like she barely spoke English. She, how she faced so much discrimination from everybody, and she wasn't even given any kind of like chance. And I don't even know what her life is like now, but she might be like homeless under a bridge type of thing, and our lives had very divergent paths, and it's because I had resources and privileges that she never had. And I'm doing that for like the two paths that where we diverged. There's other examples too I have of like a lot of like grief and anger at other people who were betrayed even more than me by the systems that are attempting to help people. And it's a lot of times, unfortunately, people who are in a part of these systems, it's people who are they're just trying to perform the status quo in order to not be harmed by people, in order to survive. And so all they can do is try to encourage other people to get in with the status quo also, instead of embracing that, instead of getting people the actual support they need, and then getting people to like embrace and love themselves and have a higher quality of life. And yeah, it's all so messy, and we are still in the dark ages. at this point in history. But I definitely have a bit of a headache now, and yeah, I just felt like I needed to talk about these things today, just trying to take another small step towards being true to myself by processing my thoughts and feelings when things come up that I care about, and by, you know, hoping to connect more with people, or at least practice my ability to connect with people by talking about the things that I care about, to help me process it all, so that one day there's more answers than I have now. There's more opportunities that I have now. There's more details to the path that I'm not at that part of the path yet right now, and I can only do with what I have now at the moment, you know. So yeah, things are hard out here. It's not an illusion. It's not us being crazy. It's not us being wrong and bad and crazy as they want us to think about ourselves. Like, the world is really messed up and thrives on, I don't want to say thrives, but there's a basis of discrimination, using shame, punishment, demonizing in order to attempt to love people, attempt to change people, attempt to support people, because there's so lack of support and resources. So people are basically just like resorting to terror because they don't know what other resources have access to, or how to encourage self-love in people. And then you look at religion and spirituality, and I know there's glimpses of positive things in there, but it's so fraught with terrifying things that it's just like, you know, how do you carve a way through all these different parts of humanity, all these different labels that get you to access different groups of people? You know, what labels, what words do you use in order to try to put yourself in closer contact or affiliation with groups who are like actually healthy, and who can actually be supportive of who you are, or parts of who you are? Like, do we always have to mask parts of ourselves to some kind of group in order to receive the support and resources that is like really healthy for us in one way, you know? I don't mask with my boyfriend, and that's how I want to live my life, to where I don't have to mask the different parts of myself in order to try to I want to, mostly what I care about is aligning myself with people and groups that prioritize respect. Like, they see it as their role is to respect, compassion, nonviolent communication. Um, and if they're not able to provide that, then they know that it's not the right relationship for themselves, for them to be in with other people. Like, those are the types of groups that I care about, and that I belong in. But it's hard to know how to find these actual individuals, and where I might not consider people because they are like from a religion, for example. But anyway, it's talking long enough now. Hope this has been helpful. If you want to share any of your thoughts or anything you've read or written, or a video that you've made, or anything, um, then please feel free to. It'd be cool to check out. And maybe someone who happens upon this video will also check it out. Okay, take care. Bye.